Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt, and this is a big one for Mazda. This may look like your average CX50, but if you look more closely on the front fender here, it says hybrid. This is the first time we've had a hybrid in the CX50, and there's one coming for the new CX5 coming in about a year or two. So I'm going to walk you through and show you everything that you need to know about the new Mazda CX50 Hybrid. Let's get into it. And as usual, we're going to start with what's new for this year, 2025. And it's the fact that you can get the CX50 now in a hybrid, which you haven't been able to do before. And spoiler alert, we're going to make a lot of comparisons to the Toyota RAV4, which I just bought a RAV4 hybrid, but that's because this is actually largely a Toyota RAV4 underneath the beautiful Mazda skin and interior. And then as we talk about competitors, you might be asking yourself, well, why would Mazda get a RAV4 hybrid when the RAV4 hybrid is one of its chief rivals? And then my wife also owns a CX5 hybrid, which is another chief rival, and we're going to be doing head-to-head videos with each of those cars, so stay tuned on the channel for that. But then you go to Korea, and Kia has their Sportage hybrid, Hyundai has their Tucson hybrid, and Subaru is also coming with a Forester hybrid this year. So let's get all this Toyota chat out of the way. Now, despite what this engine cover says, this is actually what you're looking at is a Toyota hybrid engine and powertrain system. This is Toyota's 2.5 naturally aspirated four-cylinder. This is their 4th gen hybrid system, not the 5th gen that we see in their new Camry, but it's still a very good system. What it gets here in the CX50 is, according to the EPA, 38 mpg, which is 10 better than you'll get from a normal naturally aspirated 4-cylinder CX50, and 13 mpg better than you would get in a CX50 Turbo. Now the EPA does say 38, whereas the RAV4, according to the EPA, is getting 40 mpg. Now this likely could be due to weight. The CX50 hybrid versus the RAV4 hybrid is about 200 pounds heavier. There's also aerodynamics and styling to consider, so maybe that's part of it. But the thing is, like I said, I own a RAV4 hybrid, and we have our Lakeshore Loop fuel economy test, and this car, the CX50 hybrid, came back at 42.8 mpg versus my RAV4 hybrid came back at 41.7, so a full mpg better. Now, that being said, it was about 20 degrees warmer on the day, 25 degrees warmer on the day that I did the CX50 fuel economy test, despite it being the next day, which is just, Wisconsin weather for you. But anyway, enough fuel economy chat. The power that this thing makes is the same that it's going to make in the RAV4, 219 horsepower and somewhere around 200 pound-feet of torque, because they just put an asterisk next to it because of hybrid stuff. And you can expect 0 to 60 in about 7.3 seconds. Now, some Mazda purists might be a little bit bummed that it's a Toyota engine under the hood, but I'm choosing to look at it as a positive because it's going to be tried, true, reliable, and dependable, and that was my and my wife's experience with the CX5s that we each owned, so I'm not mad about a reliable powertrain underneath the hood. And how does that power go from the engine to the wheels? Well, for a first for the CX50, it goes through an eCVT transmission, and it goes to an E all-wheel drive system, which is, again, a Toyota staple. But in terms of weight and dynamics, the CX50 hybrid is about 4,000 pounds. Again, it's about 200 pounds heavier than a RAV4 hybrid and about 100 pounds more than the non-hybrid. So the hybrid adds about 100 pounds, but it also adds like 10 mpg, so it might be worth it. Now the hybrid CX50 here is raised about 2 inches from normal due to the hybrid retrofit. That doesn't translate directly to ground clearance. You don't get an extra 2 inches of ground clearance. It's just a little bit of chonkiness to account for the retrofit. But you do have a strut front suspension with a torsion beam rear, and it's been retuned. All of the suspension's been retuned to account for the added 100 pounds of hybrid weight. It's not going to ride as well as the CX5, but that was typical of the normal CX50 as well. And you do have narrower 225 tires here on the hybrid than you would get on the normal CX50. But we'll talk about what all of this means and how it comes to fruition behind the wheel later in the video. And we will talk about styling, and I think Mazda has done this cleverly. They've basically added the CX50 hybrid without changing the styling from the normal CX50, which I would say is pretty handsome. It's a nice aggressive front look. You've got the typical black chain link style grille up front, kind of the angel eye style running lights, and really flared, look at these, really flared front shoulders in the car, creases in the hood, some black cladding down beneath, which continues all the way down the car. Now, one of the things that you can tell that it is a hybrid is you have hybrid specific wheels. They're 19-inch wheels here wrapped in 225 tires. And the other thing that you can tell, this is the only place that it says hybrid, is on that front fender. But you do have, in my opinion, obnoxious amount of wheel cladding. But other than that, it looks pretty good. Black wing mirrors, black window treatments, chrome roof rails, and a pretty flared out rear hip. But again, from the profile, you wouldn't be able to tell that this isn't a CX50 hybrid if you took off that badge on the front fender. And then the rear design, rear 3/4, completely and totally normal, like a normal CX50. Little hybrid designation here on the back, classic dual exhaust, and that's about it. I still think this is one of the more handsome options in this segment, as Mazdas typically are. And look at the way this pearl paint catches the sun here. Really, really handsome. So leave it down in the comments if you think anything else in the segment looks better than this. And then on a more practical note, we'll talk about the trunk, which is, of course, powered, as you might expect. And you do have power close and lock buttons here on your tailgate. With the rear seats up, you're looking at about 30 cubic feet of space. That is 2 cubic feet less than you would get in the normal CX50, but it's still, as you can see, pretty deep, pretty practical. And one of the things that I like, it may be a little bit smaller, but you have a pocket over here, you got another pocket over here, you've got grocery bag hangers here and there and there and there, and a lot of you are gonna love seeing what's underneath this floor. You have a spare tire. Another thing that I really like to see in this trunk is the fact that you can fold the rear seats from the trunk. This is not something that you should take for granted. This is not in a lot of cars, especially in this class. So the fact that you get that, and with the rear seats folded, you're looking at 56 cubic feet of space. Again, not the biggest in this segment, but with all the extra pockets and hangers and spare tire and the ability to fold the seats from the back here, I really do like the trunk and cargo space here in the CX50 Hybrid. Also, when it comes to towing, your max capacity is 1,500 pounds for your CX50 Hybrid, which makes it the least towing capable of all the CX50s. But then we'll check out the rear seats. Now, one of the things I want to draw your attention to is the door opens basically 90 degrees. This is super nice, very practical if you've got kids that you have to load in here with car seats and all that sort of stuff. But it is missing a couple things here in the rear seat. Like, for one, there is no window shade. There's also no heated seats back here. Now, this is kind of a fringe thing, but Mazda does play in between the kind of mainstream and luxury segment, so maybe I would have liked to see some heated rear seats, and I believe you can get heated rear seats in something like a Tucson or maybe even a RAV4. But you do have a very, very nice panoramic sunroof, and it's a decent size. The leather quality is really good. It's kind of that black with, you know, kind of sand or kind of goldish bronze stitch here, but I'll get in at 6'1". And show you how I fit back here. Now, my knees are just about into the back of the front seat. Now, this person could maybe move up a bit, but if they were taller than 6'1", they might want to move back a bit, and that would just be a little bit more cramped. There's just a little bit less room in the back of the CX50 Hybrid than the normal CX50s. And there's also a little bit less headroom because the battery for the hybrid system lives underneath the seats here. So they don't slide, they don't recline, but it also results in less headroom. You can see how I'm hitting my nub here. You guys know I don't like to hit my nub. There's also some vents back here, but no third zone of climate, and some USB-C chargers, which is good. We don't have a map pocket there, but we do have a pocket here. And overall, it's just a little bit smaller and lacking a little bit of content than some of the rivals in the class. And then we'll talk about the front seats, which again, look pretty good. They're maybe a little bit more firm than I would like, but they look really nice with the kind of caramel stitching and piping and all that sort of thing. You get 3-level heated seats, you get 3-level cooled seats, but the weird thing is you don't get a heated steering wheel. At least we don't have it here on our test car, which is a little bit odd, but you do have, where did it go? Where did it go? You have 2-level memory seats here. So overall, the seating is all right. But then when we talk about the overall cabin experience, this is kind of classic Mazda. This is where they shine over the competitors. It's just really, really well designed. Padded dash has a lot of squish to it. That kind of cross-stitched stitching goes across the dash and into the door card. The seats look really nice. The center console, even though it has some gloss black, looks pretty nice. The screen is touch sensitive, not touch sensitive, but it's kind of set back into the dash to look more integrated. You still have physical controls for your climate controls. You've got a nice cockpit with a big steering wheel, and overall it just comes together to look a little bit more upscale and luxury tier than a lot of the rivals. Now, we have the black interior spec, but you can get a red leather option for the hybrid now, which is exclusive to the hybrid. And then broadly speaking about technology real quick, this isn't always Mazda's strong suit, although I think they have done well in their CX-70 and CX-90 to bring a much more modern and tech-appointed cabin to the market. But here in your CX-50 Hybrid, you still get things like a head-up display, which is kind of nice, but you get a semi-digital instrument cluster. Some of the rivals are bringing a full digital, although you get most of the information that you'd probably want to see here on your semi-digital. You've also got I think it's 10.25-inch screen. It gets you wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it's depending on what you're doing. If you're in the native system, it's not going to be touchscreen. In CarPlay, it will be touchscreen. It also depends on your speed and all that sort of thing. But I found the system to work pretty well overall. One of the things that I don't love as much is you throw the car into reverse and you don't have a 360 camera. This, I think, has been decontented, so it doesn't really compete with the RAV4 Hybrid, at least in some of these areas. You can get a 360 camera on a RAV4 Hybrid. You can get a full digital cluster on a RAV4 Hybrid. Now, the resolution here on the rear camera is decent, but it's just a little bit small, and I would like to see a 360 camera. You also don't have a digital rear view mirror option, although I'm not super disappointed by that. So overall, the technology is okay, but it's just not class leading. It's not super competitive. And when it comes to the driver's suite, it's largely the same story. You have adaptive cruise, and you got blind spot monitoring, cross traffic, and all that stuff, but you don't have lane keep, which again, you're going to have in pretty much all of the other rivals. And you have the fairly useless EV mode button that works at very light throttle and at very low speeds. The car obviously does put itself into EV mode while you're driving automatically, depending on throttle conditions and the driving conditions and the battery state. And the interesting thing is, this is the only designation that shows EV mode. So where in the RAV4 you have this big green logo that comes up and says EV, this is just a small EV logo that goes purple when it is in EV mode and then just darkens to gray when it's not in EV mode. So very subtle. And that's probably on purpose because Mazda does not want to call out attention to a transition between gas and electric if they can help it. They want you to focus on fluid driving dynamics. So calling attention to a change in your driving status was probably not what they want to do. But let's say you are in EV mode, the engine is not running, and you're under 20 miles an hour. Now it's typical to have the hybrid howl, or a little sound emitted on the outside of the car. This is regulatory. It's to let pedestrians know that you're around, because obviously at low speeds and on EV mode, it's not making much sound from the car, so it'll let pedestrians know that you're around. Now most cars have a pretty synthetic howl. This one does as well, but it sounds weirdly like brakes grabbing at the rotor or some rubbing in the brakes. It just sounded like something was a little off with the car, and then I realized, oh, it's doing that on purpose. Hey guys, real quick, Matt here. Just wanted to say I hope you've been enjoying the video. If you have, would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it does go a long way in helping us get access to cars sooner and get access to manufacturer engineers so we can get more information on the cars and get you more information so you can make better decisions. So would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe, like, comment, the whole YouTube thing. But with that, let's get back to the video. All right, we go into the strangest named drive mode called Power, which is the sport mode. And here we go, the Toyota 4-cylinder chugging away, the CVT not changing gear because we're foot pinned to the floor. Mazda speed / Toyota speed. Yeah, I mean, there's things I like about the driving experience, there's things I don't like. The one thing I do like is the steering. It feels natural, it feels very Mazda. The weight makes sense. The way the chassis kind of holds on mid-corner and turns in feels very organic, feels very natural. Doesn't feel wallowy or cumbersome through a corner. The braking also feels the most natural. My wife has a CR-V hybrid, I have a RAV4 hybrid, and the braking in this CX50 hybrid feels the best. There's things flying around in the back because this thing is fairly dynamic. Also, despite not having independent suspension in the back. But overall, there's pros and cons to the driving experience. Con, it rides fairly stiff. It rides noticeably stiffer than my wife's CR-V hybrid. It rides stiffer than my RAV4 hybrid XSE, so the sportier, more stiffer one. So I think it probably does ride the stiffest of all the rivals, but it also is the most dynamic, so that's kind of the trade-off that you make here. Also, the engine doesn't sound that great, but that's kind of the Toyota thing. You're not going to get away from that. But I do like a lot of the rest of the driving experience. Now, there's some things inside that I don't think make sense. I get the feeling that this has been kind of decontented so as to not compete as directly with the RAV4. Now that being said, I'm shooting this in the end of January. I think it's like, it's January 30th in 2025. At some point in this year, we're going to debut, or they're going to debut, the new generation RAV4. And I'm assuming that'll have the new Toyota Hybrid 5 system that the new Camry has. And so this would only be so directly competing with the RAV4 for like a few months, although most people aren't paying that close attention. But overall, I think they've just taken a few things out. Like, I would like to have a lane keep assist. I would like to have a 360 camera. You know, some of the other stuff that we complain about, oh, it doesn't have full digital cluster. It doesn't, who cares? That doesn't really make a big difference. But I would like to have a 360 camera, and I do think the safety suite could be a little bit more robust. Mazda has a really nice safety suite in their CX50 or CX70 and CX90. Now those are Mazda bespoke platforms and powertrains. So this, with a lot of the Toyota sharing, maybe that has something to do with it. But overall, it's really impressive what they've done with the CX50. There's a couple little nitpicks as we've talked about, but overall, you get incredible fuel economy. It outperformed my RAV4. Now granted, it was 25 degrees warmer, but I do let the cars warm up and get to their optimal operating temperatures before I do that fuel economy test. And this did do better. It just did better. It's also a Mazda interior, which is better than the Toyota and basically everything else in the segment. It also has a Mazda skin on the outside, which looks better than pretty much anything else in the segment, bar the CX5, which is also getting a hybrid coming soon, I think. So there's a lot of positives with this car. There's a couple little nitpicks, but there's a lot to love about it, and I think it's priced right. I really do. Especially if you're looking for a more well-optioned, a tastier spec. It's a good value. You can spend more on a CR-V and have a lot of the same shortcomings that this has, but this gets better fuel economy in the real world by like a lot. And then the RAV4, it's old. It's got a more geometric, less sculpted and elegant and expensive design on the outside. It's got a much older looking interior, a lot more scratchy plastics. And so I think I'm gonna keep rambling, but the point is, there's a lot to love about this CX50 with the hybrid. It's going to be dependable. It's Toyota's tried and true hybrid system. It doesn't affect the driving character, the Mazda driving signature too much. There's still Mazda-ness in essence behind the wheel. You still get a lot of the great Mazda. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to like. I'm repeating myself a lot, but there's a lot of stuff to like. So I hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Mazda for letting us have a go in your CX50 hybrid. I can't wait to try the new CX5 hybrid, which I think is coming out soon, but we'll see you in the next one.